Okay, today we are going to look at section 18.1 on page 848. We're going to look at multiplying monomials and then a little bit with polynomials. This is going to give us a chance to look at some of those properties of exponents that we've been looking at, where we multiply things. If they have the same bases, we can add the exponent. For quickly, one thing that we can kind of look at is what it means to be a monomial. And that prefix mono means one. It's basically like saying it's one term, right? A monomial is one chunk of something. In a little bit, we'll look at some polynomials that would be two terms or more than that. So when we look at this, we're going to multiply them. We are going to use that product of powers property. We also are going to look at the front numbers. So if we have two terms, we're going to take just that front number, the 6 and the -4. They're just regular numbers. We can multiply them together right there. Also, the x and the x to the third and the x to the fourth, those two are like bases. So we're going to take those two things and multiply them together. All right, just rearranging multiplication, stuff like that, you can alter the order of what you multiply. It's not going to make much of a difference with that. It'll end up being the same thing. So 6 times -4 is -24. And then x to the third power times x to the fourth. We're going to add those exponents together. 3 plus 4 gives us x to the seventh. All right. Similar idea over here for part B. The number out front, and that didn't work very well. The number out front, 5 times the 7. So we'll put the 7 in here. And then we'll group the x's together. We have x times x. And we have a y squared and a y, so we'll group those things together. If you group them by their like bases, it can help you to simplify them a little bit. All right, 5 times 7. All right, we have x to the first power times x to the first power. So that's x to the first 1 plus 1. And then we have y to the second power, and so that's a little 2 in there. So y to the second power times y to the first power, 2 plus 1. This ends up giving us 35x. 1 plus 1 is 2, x squared, y to the third. And I'll try to actually make it look like a third. There, almost. Okay, so 35x squared, y to the third. If we're looking at the products of powers of property, the bases need to be the same. We can't have different bases. If they're different bases, we cannot add the exponents. We can't add the 2 and the 3 that are on the x and the y because they are different bases. All right, so now take a minute or two to work on this next one. You have that your turn, number 4. All right, and when you're ready, we'll go through it quickly. We have 18 times 3. Okay, we have a y squared and a y to the 6th. So let's group those together. All right, we have x to the third. and x to the 8th. Let's group those together. And z to the 1st times z to the 4th. Group those together. Okay. 18 times 3 should be 54. All right, y squared times y to the 6th. Add those exponents. That's y to the 8th. X to the 3rd times x to the 8th. Add them together, x to the 11th. And z to the 1st times z to the 4th is z to the 5th. So our whole overall answer is that right there. Sorry if it looks a little messy. I'll try to clean that one up a little bit. But should be 54 times y to the 8th, x to the 11th, z to the 5th. Okay. Next, we are going to look at explain 2, multiplying a polynomial by a monomial. So this is going to be the distributive property a little bit. If we multiply it, it's the same as multiplying each piece. So before, when we did distribution, we usually did two things. We have to make sure that we multiply this 3x throughout the whole thing, multiply it by each piece. All right, so the 3x times the 3x squared. 3x, there should be a 3x in front of each piece. 3x times the 6x and 3x times the negative 5. All right, multiply the front numbers together again. Multiply the x's, add the exponents because we are multiplying, and we should get 9x cubed plus 18x squared minus 15x. So again, it's important to remember to multiply the front numbers like they're just regular numbers. Add exponents only on like bases. All right, so next we are going to distribute again. We have to distribute the 2xy to each piece in the term. All right, so we have three different groups. We have 2xy times the first piece, that 5x squared times y. Then we have 3x times y squared, so that's going to go in here. And finally, we have that 7xy, that's going to go in here. We are multiplying that 2xy times each of those pieces. All right, and 7xy. Okay. So multiply each piece through and add the exponents of the like bases. So this one will have 2 times 3. That should be a 6. And some of this is going to be a little hard to do with this pen. I'll just write it off to the side. Okay, so the second chunk, it should be 6. And then x to the first times x to the first gives us x squared. And y times y squared add the exponents y to the third. Alright, so this whole chunk right here ends up being that piece. Alright, we're also going to take this last chunk, multiply those things together. 2 times 7 is 14. X times x, 2 x's, x squared. And y times y is y squared. Alright, so we end up getting 10x to the third, y to the second, plus 6x squared, y to the third, plus 14x squared, y squared. Alright. So, I do want you to think about this last piece. Is the product of a monomial and a polynomial always going to be a polynomial? So I want you to think through that, explain, write it out, and think about how many terms it would have. After you're ready with that, I want you to work on the your turn. So do that, and then I'll go through that in just a second. Alright, so on this one, we are going to distribute the 2a squared through to each piece. So we're going to have 2a squared times 5b squared plus 2a squared times 3ab plus 2a squared times 6a and plus 2a squared times 1. Alright, go through to simplify it. 2 times 5 is 10. A squared, there's no other like base with a, so leave it as a squared. And b squared, there's nothing else with the b, so 10a squared b squared. Alright, plus 2 times 3 is 6. A squared times a, there's add those exponents, is a to the third power. And nothing times the b, so it's just b. Next, 2 times 6 is going to give us 12. And a squared times a, it's going to give us a to the third power. And lastly, 2 times 1 is just 2, so that's just going to be 2a squared. Alright. So, if you notice, there were 4 terms inside the parentheses. There are 4 terms here. That kind of goes to answer that previous question. If we multiply a monomial and a polynomial, we're always going to get that polynomial. And it should have as many terms as whatever this has. This has 4 terms. We'll have 4 terms in our answer. Alright, so for your assignment, what I want you to work on with this section, we're going to scroll down to page 851. And you are going to do the odds on this page, and we'll do the odds up through 15. All right, so page 851 to 852. One through 15 odds. All right. Tomorrow you guys will have a quiz review to work on, and we will have a quick quiz over exponent rules on Friday.